Morning Trumptopia. With your host, the Incorrigible Mr Zeppo. A spin-off segment, part of the increasingly diversifying collection of podcast projects that the Incorrigible Mr Zeppo occasionally works on. In this segment, reviews of current events, news, and basically satirical commentary on the follies of government and politics, pragmatic suggestions from beyond the typical political ideological spectrum. Submit your questions to Good Morning Trumptopia. Our email, or my email, the show's email, TheIncorrigibleMrZeppo at gmail.com. Should be right in the show's description. Today's episode, 6/20/2017. It is good to be back, folks. Returning from a brief hiatus, I, the Incorrigible Mr Zeppo, return to rant and rave about the most recent round of mind-blowing current events. By the way, for those curious, the theme music for Good Morning Trumptopia is called Lion's Haven by Art of Escapism. I found it on freemusicarchive.org. Link should be in the show description. Good Morning Trumptopia is recorded using the Sprecher Studio platform in front of a live internet audience. That's, of course, the sound effects, folks. Currently, no one joins the Incorrigible Mr. Zeppo's podcast live because I'm a bit of a amateur and I haven't actually sorted out my schedule, but that's neither here nor there. This is a passion project of mine. Those of you who have been listening along, thank you kindly for your support. Please keep listening. As sporadic and as random as it has been, the objective is to start doing this on a more regular basis and actually pinpoint some specific times for each segment where an audience can build. So, if you're out there listening, let me know. Start sharing, start posting comments, etc., etc., etc. Well, here we are, folks. Like I said, I'm back from a long hiatus. I had to go spend time in another place, in another dimension. Of course. I was just really busy with my quote-unquote real-life day job, which I don't talk about too much on this show, because that's not the purpose of this show. This is Good Morning Trumptopia. Yeah, funny, huh? And I get some heat. I have gotten some heat for using the term. By the way, folks, I would like to assert the notion, which I think is genuinely true, that I myself, the Incorrigible Mr. Zeppo, otherwise known as my real-life name, which shall be left unsaid today just because I'm feeling silly about it, although I'm not particularly anonymous or anything, otherwise known as R.J. Romero. Just contradicting myself. Well, I'm crazy like that. I think I coined the term Trumptopia. I was once informed that I shouldn't insult everybody or people who supported Trump that way. And I don't intend to use my intent behind the term Trumptopia is not to belittle or berate those who are passionately in support of Trump. We are all Trumptopians, folks. Each and every one of us, no matter who we voted for or did not vote for, no matter what we think we believe, no matter where on the ideological spectrum we choose to self-identify, we all now live in Trumptopia together. Whether we survive Trumptopia or not, that's a whole nother question. But let's get to some of the ranting and raving. It's been a crazy 100 days since he was elected. I was sort of pretending to track the days there for a hot second, but as I will concede, this is a hobbyist sort of podcast, and when I'm really busy, I don't keep up with it. In theory, though, I'll get really badass. This is sort of like when you start going to the gym, right? Everybody knows this. Anybody who's had a gym membership for 15 years and is still in not the best of shape, in the best shape they've ever been in their lives, knows that feeling of going to the gym, getting excited about it, getting really amped up, going for about 2.5 weeks, and then sputtering out, right? I've focused my intent to make this podcast and some other projects more consistent in terms of when they drop. So here we are, though. What a roller coaster ride it's been. From victorious and spectacularly overwhelming election, hands down landslide election of the great orange savior, to this witch hunt. It's been... Who's exhausted? Raise your hands. I think the great leader himself, the unimpeachable Donald J. Trump, formerly known as Drumpf, he himself is looking a little bit exhausted of all that winning. Doesn't he, folks? If you are the kind of person that watches the news, you've probably already seen one of the two basic sort of breakdowns being kind of trounced about, which is, the right echo chamber or the left echo chamber, the list of what his successes or his failures, and everyone's generally aware of some of the surface things that he's been doing. And as we move forward, I just want to point out that we can get lost down the infinitely distracting rabbit hole of rabbit holes of arguing and bickering and nitpicking at every crazy thing, every crazy utterance that comes from the White House, that comes from this administration, that comes from the man himself. Or we can take a step back, take a couple of really deep breaths together, and start looking at the pattern. You gotta treat this presidency like an abstract painting. What's his name? Is it there's a great joke in Guardians of the Galaxy, and I can't remember the name of the artist. I sort of vaguely remember the consonants and syllables. It's not Pollock. Is it Pollock? The painter with the splatter paint, right? Like, if you just... I didn't mean to bring the sex joke in. Sex joke? Question mark? If you haven't seen it, go watch the movie. If you have seen it, giggle to yourself, and let's stay focused here. With any kind of abstract pattern, let's say fractal, for example, you can get lost, like zooming into it, right? You can get lost. We can get lost going down the rabbit hole of Confeviv. How do you pronounce that? I'm gonna tap that real quick and just say, like, my favorite meme so far, and I'm sure many of you might, if you haven't seen it yet, you'll love it. Go find it. I don't have it ready on my desktop here, but I will. If this were a video podcast or a vlogcast or whatever you'd call it, I would. If I had staff, I'd have things lined up and slides and things. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Recruiting local collaborators, by the way, as always. But my favorite Confefiv meme has been, the first rule of Confefiv is you don't talk about Confefiv. And there's like Abraham Lincoln and George Washington leading the pack of the Fight Club poster of those guys, in the basement. That picture, I think it's genius, and I think there's something to it, in a sort of like happy accident abstract way. Obviously, I mean, we can get lost on the question of what happened. Why did he write that? What did he mean to write? Was he trying to talk about coverage? One might say, but I like that it's become, the word has taken on a life of its own for a hot minute. I don't know if it's still running or if everybody was burnt out on it. Because I know I'm burnt out. I myself, the coiner of the Trumptopian terminology, got a little burnt out on paying attention to what the fuck was going on in Trumptopia for a split second there. Especially at the end of, like, the burst of work. I had a burst of work, a lot of fun, and then, like, super busy, very hands-on, very, like, lifting heavy things. And then some downtime and some family time. So much love to all those people involved. But anyways, I had to, like, take a breather. But so, what was my point? Like a Jackson Pollock picture or a fractal or the realization that a rabbit hole is a path full of rabbit holes with more rabbit holes inside of them. We can keep getting lost and arguing about which rabbit hole is the better rabbit hole. But maybe we can kind of all start agreeing that what we're talking about is a collection of rabbit holes. Some of you might just have gotten my point. Some of you might be like telling me to fuck off. That it's important. Words matter. Actions matter. Tweets matter. Hashtag tweets matter. That might be a new thing, guys. I don't know. Is hashtag tweets matter a thing already? I haven't seen it yet. That doesn't mean it isn't or that it is, but if it already exists out there, I'm jumping on that bandwagon. If it doesn't exist out there, I'm calling it right now. 6/2017, I coined it. Hashtags, hashtags matter. Hashtags matter. I was working on a meme that I lost track of somewhere on my junk file of memes on my device. That was something about, when did $sign become hashtag? Hashtag $sign? Hashtag? And I really wanted to know if I think I got distracted because I wanted to know if hashtags can include exclamation points, question marks. They probably can't, shouldn't. Don't work if they do, probably. But I wanted to include a question mark because I like things that end in ... question mark. Hashtag ... question mark. Is that even a thing? So, as Trumptopians, as citizens of Trumptopia, whether we like it or not, whether we're resisting or we're just like loving up on it, and waving flags with Trump's face on it, which if that doesn't exist, I should make that, because who can make flags? Who can print flags? Let's go 60-40 on a deal, because the American flag with Trump's face on it should be a thing, and we should be making as much money on the suckers that'll sell it, because that's the real America, is corporate, extortion. But let's let's zoom back as citizens of this place and go, what is really going on? Because we could sit around, like, for example, today. What happened today? Paul Ryan spoke about tax reform. At least the news seemed to indicate as such. It appeared to be live. And, you can't even trust that shit, right? Because if all our news, if every source... What if I'm owned by some big corporation, you guys? And this is all part of some... And I don't even realize it because I live... by myself and, wear tin foil has. No, but on the news, all over the news, Paul Ryan talking about tax reform, talking about, revamping the law so we can get more credit out there so people can build capital. I'd break it to you, Paul Ryan, but credit is not capital, bro. So I'm not sure what you were trying to say with that, unless I misunderstood. But from what I heard, you were really sort of playing the same, like this is all the same brainwashing nonsense that we've been getting since the Reagan era. So the idea that tax reform is about cutting taxes so that you can save money is almost always incredibly misleading. In other words, even if they do cut taxes on the lower 30%, the lower 50%, the top tiers are the ones that are getting the biggest chunks. And then we get stuck some other way. And then one of the ways they get us is inflation. But let's not get lost down the economics rabbit hole. Let's step back. As a transcendentalist, one of my big arguments with every politician arguing about policy over fiscal, fiduciary stuff is that stop playing word games, folks, is the real message that we, the citizens of Trumptopia, have to bring to those that pretend to represent us and really hold them accountable to that. The anger, we've had our first 100 days, and we've had a little tip and nod to this, but let me stop for a moment and acknowledge what I think is the most impressive thing of the first 100 days, the first 200 days. And that's that of all the presidencies I've lived through, and probably if we come through history, this has had the most persistent and consistent and sort of diverse set of resistance protest movements that have come alive under it. Let's hope. Here's one of those. Here's the cheers to the, cheers to you meme. Here's cheers to all the protesters and all the movements and all the organizations that have sprung up out of this. Can you keep moving? But back to the taxes thing. Can you keep going? We all have to have a moment, a collective moment. There's been so much anger, so much rage, so much disillusionment on both sides, on all sides, ladies and gentlemen. Because let us not forget that I'm here to address from a perspective that I think politely I should, it might indicate it lays outside of the standard political spectrum. And I would like to create a new space within the political spectrum. And that's the step back and remind ourselves that all of this, taxes, economics, the way that our quote-unquote representative government works, all of it is something that we, or our forefathers, people before us, which are still we, collectively speaking, we invented it. The statists will tell you that the institutions must be preserved and that they have power unto themselves in a certain way, that they have life. And the extreme statists are trying to make entities give personhood to entities in order to endow them with rights, right? And they're starting at the corporate level. Because let it not be forgotten that no matter how much you love democracy, the original 13 colonies are corporations. And so this democracy and the system of systems that we invented is sort of self-contradictory on many levels, including things that we're really things that let's not forget what we're upset about. It's been thrown around and bandied about, but are we going to actually get any reform done on the Electoral College? Now I'm scatterbrained and all over the place. And I am already halfway through my time for this segment. Let's not get confused about what we're angry about. There's my message there, folks. As I check back into Trumptopia, and obviously there's a lot we can dig deep, but I'm sort of a zoom back kind of person. My message today to anybody listening, and anybody at any time catching up with this episode, is let's take a breather. We can't sustain our resistance or our support, because I'm kind of neutral on the matter. Even if you support the president, because in a way I sort of see the rationale. I know many get pissed off at this, the way people get pissed off at the Black Lives, All Lives, Blue Lives, the sort of tete-a-tete or repartee there. It's easy to get upset about saying things that counter another position. So it's easy to get upset at anyone saying, we have to hope for the best, folks, and he is the president. This is Trumptopia. And while we may choose to be on the opposition side, which is valid and fair not only in a democracy, but also within corporate culture, there has to be some way to have counterbalancing movements if we're going to deal with ideological constructs. But as we move forward and accept the conditions that we find ourselves in, let's not allow what we know about the system to get lost and overshadowed by the crazy. And what do we know about the system? From before Donald Trump touched it with his golden magicalness and turned it into the Trumptopian system. And mind you, that's not as crazy as it sounds. He really is trying to transform the way government works. He wasn't kidding about that. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. There's a bunch of things on that list, and I'd love to know all that are on them so that I sound less redundant on an episode-by-episode basis. But one of the scariest things about this president is that he's really good at not letting you know what he's actually thinking. You notice that now, increasingly, he reads from teleprompters more than his raw statements. Even his tweets, sometimes we get half-completed sentences with severely misspelled words. Other times, we get things that sound really scripty, like someone else wrote them and copy-pasted it. He sent it to them, and he just copy-pasted it. And other times, it's wild madness that you can't quite even begin to follow. But the scariest thing about him, to make my point really clear, is that he mixes facts, which are not always, all caps the truth, but also some truth in with his insanity, in with his crazy. And only he knows to what end, and what things are really true, what things are crazy or wrong or inaccurate, but he himself truly believes them to be true, what things he knows to be false, but he's going to pretend or play act at him claiming them to be true, and things are flat out lies that he both knows are not true and he knows are crazy, unbelievable lies. I think that the fact checkers are still recovering from the election. We just dinged the 2-year anniversary of the whole beginning of this election process, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. 2 years ago, 2 years ago now, a few weeks ago, as of a couple weeks ago, or several days ago, this process began. And now we're into just the first quarter, of the first year. Well, rather, we're in the second quarter, right? I guess we're in the middle. We're at the beginnings of summer here, and we're in the middle of the second quarter, end of the second quarter. January, February, March, April, May, June. Right, we're at the end of the second quarter. I be smarts. I'm a college graduate. We're less than halfway through the first year of this new political cycle. And let's remember, all cycles are cycles within cycles and within cycles. So to call back on that organizing thing, I hope everybody from Black Lives Matter to Blue Lives Matter to pro-life to pro-choice, I hope everybody's organizing around and I see some evidence of this already with the persistence of the town hall protests and some of the kind of volatility around local the earliest rounds of local elections that crop up on the news. But let's get serious about it, folks. Whether you're resist or whether you're pro-Trump, the politics is a game, and the game is, it's not how well you mow, it's how well you mow fast. It's not how fast you mow, it's how well you mow fast, right? It's not how shiny you politics, it's how well organized your shiny politics gets on the ground. I don't know. Trying to build a spoofy construction around that commercial, but I got it all wrong. But there's big opportunities coming up. And here I'm addressing really whatever percentage of my potential audience is engaged in politics, even at whether they're statisty or whether they're reformers. Because I'm a provocateur, right? And I'm not here to tell you you're right or you're wrong. I'm here to encourage you to engage. Because if nothing else, life is about engaging with others. Big proviso, folks. Let's do it with peace. Let's do it at the ballot box, not at the end of a gun barrel. Okay? I'm gonna do a whole nother episode about that. I'm gonna do a breaking news episode about guns. But and there I'll be kind of, here's the facts, and then here's my opinion. But back to the politics, it's the same kind of problem, folks. I hate to get declarative and talk about things in broad strokes, but all of this is ego-driven. And yeah, the state system is the problem this way, and the media problem is the media problem because of that. My favorite response to that is be your own media. That's hard because it's overwhelming. Just to keep track of one collection of events gets difficult, right? That's what this little assortment of segments is all about. Good Morning Trumptopia is sort of like my opinion rant. My what do you call that in the newspapers? It's the op-ed section about all the current events. So I willy-nilly kind of jump around, but I have done the research. I've been watching the news, and I get it. It's amazing that anybody gets any content out, whether they're evil mainstream media corporately owned by whoever's in charge of the oppression, or independent. Like I know some independent media people that it's just one or two folks on Facebook, etc., and a website, but they put together news articles and real stories and real blogs. But it's mind-blowing. I don't know how you've got time to just find out what the latest bullshit is, then research it, then organize your thoughts around it, then write an intelligent, well-composed 6 to 10 paragraph. It's overwhelming. But you can be your own media by not forming your opinion through passive, aggressive, messaging where you just sort of accept whatever's told at you by those around you, but doing a little bit of digging a little bit deeper than whatever's on insert name of favorite news channel here. I've been accused of being a Luddite. I've been accused of being an elitist. I've been accused of all kinds of things. But most of those things are false. And one thing that kind of rubs me the wrong way is when someone accuses me of just parroting this or that outlet. Well, you're just parroting what you heard on Fox News. It was really ironic for the last year and a half, though, because I didn't even get Fox News on my home cable system. I'm just a humble dude, the lower end of the economic spectrum, that's just a couple of paychecks away from being broke on my ass and potentially homeless, to be quite frank. With a lot of opinions about what's going on in the world based on wherever I get my news from, which I can source it all out for you if you're a real stickler for making your arguments with sources like we're still all in college. But yeah, I try to avoid the echo chamber because honestly, for a long time now, I've been aware of the way in which the echo chamber system works, which is, like I was saying about our president himself, he's a master of the echo chamber. He's not a master of the deal. He's a master of creating his own brand echo chamber. And you can see it. Like, I'm the only one who can fix it. That's a direct quote from the president. No, Mr. Trump, no one individual can fix anything. If that were true, our Lord and Savior himself, Jesus Christ, wouldn't have gotten nailed to a cross. He would have fixed everything right then and there. His message is, in fact, I alone cannot fix your problems. Now, many Christians may knee-jerk response negatively reject that notion, but that's just because they're knee-jerk response, conditioned to reject anything that doesn't come out of their own pastor's mouth most of the time. But yes, if you look at Christ's message, if you look at the Buddha's message, it isn't about relinquishing your ability to think and discern for yourself what is the truth in favor of what someone else is defining the truth to be, which is what Trump sort of eloquently in sort of common man, everyday speak, manages to convey. Just don't believe anybody else tells you, believe me, right? And that's crazy talk if you really stop and think about it. I try to, now that I've got I'm very excited, much gratitude to the powers that be. I've got access to a slightly more balanced collection of news vis-a-vis the cable. And the previously my internet was really bad, which is people would be like, oh, well, you could have checked what was on Fox News on the internet. I'm like, yes, and I shall be doing so on my segment, News Breaking News, both referencing things on cable and on the news from all sides that you can get on the internet. But as we consume that, and this is the problem with the fake news problem, is that whether it's fake news or real news or fake real news or real fake news, the vast majority of it is part of the system of holding up an echo chamber process, mixing facts with propaganda, with exaggerations, with ideological talking points in order to pit people in the American community, the Trumptopian communities, because we got a lot of different kinds of communities all commingling here, and pit us against each other. Because that ultimately benefits those who ride the top of our postmodern society. And I'll be talking more about that, as I always do, in segments titled The Daily Zencast, because that's much less about what's going on in this particular country or that particular country, and more about what's going on in the metaverse of our lives. And that's where I get heavy and talk about, the crazy out-of-the-box solutions. But let's not get caught up in the echo chamber, right? Because that's how they keep us distracted and keep fooling us into voting idiots into office. Just like there's that cultural meme, stop making idiots famous. We got to stop voting morons into office. And let's be fair. The Bush dynasty, not the sharpest knives in the barrel. Even Papa Bush. I'm old enough to remember some of the crazy things. And I'm old enough to remember who he personally hand-selected. That's the public claim at any rate. If it was all puppeteered by some Illuminati-esque or the Illuminati itself, that just goes to show you that they want to put idiots in front of us to see how stupid we get. That's Trumptopia for you, folks. It all reminds me, to wrap things up a little bit for this bit of a rant, the craziness all makes me think of the Who song. And to paraphrase a line from that, let's get on our knees and pray that we don't get fooled again. Because they got us fooled on from all quarters, guys. They got us coming and going. They got a huge swath of Trumptopia so pissed off and angry and convinced that their weird, crazy political opinion is right that they don't even vote. And I'm not saying that voting isn't currently totally toxic and corrupted by those who make their living by controlling our society. It is. But let's face it, folks, we all got to organize. If there were no 1%, if we lived in a perfect world, in a utopian, we would still need to organize and make decisions, and we would still have differences of opinion. Okay? And there's sort of two ways to skin this cat. You can either... Now, I get it. The whole, abdicate the system and build a whole new system. But I don't see that happening. The non-voting bloc, where's your new organizing system? Okay, I see that there's a growing movement of anarchists. And I'm generally sort of double thumbs up to y'all, peaceful ones. I think the ones who really get what that potential kind of progressive anarchism can really be. But there's a jaded, evil, dark side to anarchism, and there always has been, because ego trap is ego trap. How do you fix that? Big question. Deep question. Maybe with a little bit of meditation. Maybe anarchists need to meditate too, right? Because I don't see a utopia of anarchists forming up and around our current system to attract us all away from the system. Because that's the truth that Buckminster Fuller, if I'm not mistaken, sort of let us in on. You can replace a system. You don't have to fight the system, especially if the system's ready for you to fight, especially if the system's led you into a corner of a particular kind of, to expect to have to do a particular kind of fighting. That's why I never endorse or support, weak laugh, right? Like, haha, well, how's that funny? I don't know. I just thought we need to, point that out. That there's resistance, and then there's getting cajoled into violence. I reject and renounce. By the way, this is important because this is about what's going on in the world today, and people might be curious. That shooter who shot at the baseball practice full of Republican congresspersons or senators, whichever one it was. I denounce that, and I completely. Everyone should, and that'll lure us right into the gun thing, which we might make a show called Guntopia, because that's a whole nother issue, folks. They want us, and I'll give you the main thrust of that segment right here, right now, so we can get deep into it later, and then I got to wrap things up. The reason we got to keep a level head, each and every one of us, regardless of where we may have originated from ideologically, is because those that profiteer on the system, those that weave the system, those that construct the system, those that propagate the system, it's constructed around conflict, folks. Conflict here, in our own communities, in our own households, in our own neighborhoods. There's a lot of statist folks running around turning a blind eye to the profiteering going on left and right. And there's a lot of folks who are aware of the profiteering, but it's also not taking it into account that has to do with all of it, okay? Including, luring us into violence. Just the way, as much as we don't like to talk about it because everyone likes their tasty and refreshing adult beverage, they lure us into being intoxicated, which leads us down multiple paths that they can profiteer on us. Don't get me started on healthcare problems caused by drinking. As a former drinker, and I still, I'm not a hardcore abolitionist or a teetotaler, but I'm no fool either. It gets you sick, and it gets you in trouble with the law. And for an unfortunate, percentage of us, it gets you riled up and angry and or blind to your own, leanings towards criminality, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, by the way, studies show that alcohol, that most celebrated of not illegal drugs, is the gateway that everyone's always so busy bitching and moaning about. Alcohol is the gateway drug to hardcore drugs. Alcohol is the gateway drug to criminal activity. Alcohol is the gateway drug to violent behavior towards loved ones. Alcohol. That's a whole nother episode, right? All right, let's turn it back. Let's kind of dial it back to where we were. The system wants us to get fooled again. And there's two ways to skin the cat. We can build another system that radically and completely, in a completely different way, provides for our needs to be organized and provide the basics that everybody needs when we live together. And we can, or we can get in there and quote unquote fight the good fight, which is something I talk about in other episodes that I don't really even believe in that. but we can get into the system that we are currently stuck dealing with and heal it from the inside out. And that includes a sort of formal, technocratic resistance that is not blind obstructionism. Okay? Which is really funny to hear commentators from the puppeteered right, from the ideological right-hand GOP sort of endorsing spectrum, talk about the witch hunt. That's ironic. Talk about witch hunt. What do we call birther movement? This extremism. They're banging on about the extremism from the left, and they're banging on about the other thing I just said. It's just ironic, hypocritical, and crazy sounding. But it's what they want. They want to fool you again. They want your short-term memory about the latest news to forget. Like, they don't want you to realize that the trickle-down economics is something they've already played us with, and it's nonsense. They don't want you to realize that they've already tried to fuck us on healthcare, and that they're going to fuck us on healthcare again. And that while this is supposed to be a Christian nation, they're sitting around pussyfooting with this bullshit profiteering back and forth, and they've created an ideological, let's look at the healthcare spectrum really quick. What are the prevailing ideas in America about healthcare? We're arguing over whether or not to try to do a single-payer healthcare system, which is still profit-driven, by the way. There's still people taking profit out of your being sick. And there's still the inherent nationwide systems of getting you sick, which take profit, and one we just touched on, right? Never mind cigarettes. As a former trying to quit smoker, pays off about that. Or making the healthcare system itself free market profiteering, straight up. And which what's it going to do? If they pass this blind test, we're going to talk about healthcare bill more. But what's going to happen there? If they pass that secret bill, we're going to lose coverage for the most of the need. And they're going to profiteer on the middle ground and give the best coverage to the wealthiest. Is that what Jesus taught us about healthcare? One would think, having really studied Christ's words, that in a Christian nation, we'd be healing people for free by now. Living up to Christ's example. Call me crazy. But that's Trumptopia for you. That's me back on the air. Thank you for listening to my first segment. There's so much to dig into, so much that I didn't even get to touch on. And we're going to come back from a slightly different perspective. I'm going to come back from a slightly different perspective. One of my other segments. As always, thank you for listening. If you like what we're talking about here, then tell your friends. Share this show on social media. Contribute. Tips and donations are welcome. Help me get my own podcast app built and out there so anybody can catch my episodes no matter when I put them out. If you think I'm crazy and wrong, submit it and we'll talk about it. Until next time, this has been your host, the Incorrigible Mr Zeppo. May peace, love, and grooviness be with you. Be good Trumptopians, folks. If you are local and you're still listening and you're interested in what I'm doing here, and you want to co-host or be interviewed or be an occasional guest, hit me up.